Hi, this is Joshua here, and I'm going to be teaching you how to implement Google Sign-In. Um, for the backend, I used Spring Boot, and for the front end, I used Flutter to create an Android app. So I'm looking at it from the backend and front end perspective. So just to make it all round, I have implemented normal username and password, sign up and sign in, and also Google sign up and sign in. So I'm going to be walking you through both of them. Just maybe a demo. So my backend is running on port 8080, which is the default port. And front end is here. So I have run the app. So let me just sign up. Joshua Ilumar, Josh at email.com. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I'm going to sign up. So sign up successful. Email.com. So this is the basic login with GWT, right? So you can view profile, right? Sign out. Okay, let me attempt to sign in using my Google account. So if I click sign in with Google, it's going to trigger if I should use this using OAuth 2. So if I say yes to sign me in, if I view my profile, Joshua Iluma, right? So this is what we're going to be doing. Um, in the same vein, you could also trigger sign up too, right? Just take me to my profile screen. So we'll be starting with the backend, and the first thing we'll do is that we'll bootstrap a Spring Boot project by going to start.spring.io. We'll be using Spring Web to create RESTful APIs using Lombok for our annotations that will help us with boilerplate codes for creating getters, setters, and builders. Then Postgres driver for connecting with our Postgres database. We're going to be using Postgres um, SQL. Then Spring Data JPA for interacting with our databases. So the first thing we'll do is that we'll just rename this to YAML and update the details in YAML in the properties file. So I'll do this very quickly. So create a database called SignIn. And we go ahead to run the backend. Right, it's running now. The first thing we'll do is that we'll create our folders, our folder structure. So in our configuration folder, we'll be adding any configuration, uh, beans configuration we want. In our controller, we're having several controllers like authentication controller and all of that. Entity folder will have database structure. Exception folder, we have classes that will handle our exceptions. A models folder will have request and response detail. A repository contain a repository for interacting with our database. Security will contain configurations for our screen security, and service have the logic for every controller. Utils just for creating um, things we don't want to things we want to reuse, right? Okay. Next, let's quickly start with our controller. And the first thing we'll be doing is I'll be creating an authentication controller very quickly. Let's go ahead to create the structure for our database. Some of the columns we need would be ID, email, first name, last name, then the username and password. So this is what we'll be saving in the database. To securely save our passwords, I mean the users' passwords, and loads the user from the database. So to allow Spring Security to handle this, we're going to say this class implements user details. So I'll just go ahead to add Spring Security. I would also add um, the dependencies for creating JWT tokens. The next thing we do very quickly is to create our authentication service. Oh, lest I forget, since we've created the user table, we'll create the repository for the table to help us um, interact with the database. Some of the data we're going to be pulling, some of our interactions, so we'll be finding by email. I'm going to check if the user is already in our database. And if it's users already in our database, I'll say users already access to this email address. And if not, then we'll go ahead to register the user. Then we implement our service class. At this point, we need to create a controller that will handle our exception, and also a response detail that will be outputted to the user when there's an exception. So the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create another exception handler that will handle a normal exception when a normal exception is thrown. Exception. I mean, let's this one will be runtime exception. Like this will be a normal exception. So we could literally overload the method. Then we'll build our user. So I have added a builder here, builder annotation. Then don't forget to save the user. Of course, if you call it now, it's not going to work because I've not um, implemented my Spring Security. So unauthorized. So I will now implement Spring Security. For our Spring Security, we are going to be using three things. The first one will be um, an authentication provider. Second one would be JWT filter configuration. We have an authentication exception handler. The last one we'll have is our security exception. We import authentication provider. So authentication provider will help us with authenticating the user. It's from Spring Security. So it could get the user's credentials, right, and details. The second thing we'll implement is the JWT filter config. But before we do that, we'll first um, implement our JWT. And to do that, we'll create a new table for JWT tokens and we'll call it token. These are the fields for the token that will be in token table. The ID, the token itself, if it is revoked, if it's expired, and the user that the token is mapped to. So user could have several JWT tokens, but only one will be valid. As user will create the repository. So the next thing we do is to create the JWT service. This service will handle everything concerning generation of token, validation of token, extracting of claims, everything from scratch. I'll just copy and paste what I have done for JWT service and explain what I did. So this function will extract the username from the token. I will give you an example of a token. Let's go to jwt.io and here is a sample token. Yeah. Okay, let's use this, right? So this is a sample token and this is the subject, right, who the token refers to. This is the expiration and time, and this is the issue that time. It's just other details that will be present in the token. Um, so the extraction of username actually tries to get the subject who the owner of the token. So that's what that does. So that's what this function does. And the extraction of claims literally extracts all the all the details that are present in the token, right? So these are claims, the sub, name, just details in this table. So in this case, it will be rows, issued out time, expiry time, and subjects. So that's what this function does. It's when the JWT token is passed into the function, and the claim resolver um, resolves the claims, whereby it gets the signing key. Here is the key that we'll use to sign this token. This key has to be a secret key. So you store it in the environment, store it in application properties, right? So it gets the extracts or the claims of the token. So this literally um, converts your secret key, converts your string into a key, a secret key type, right? So this is used to sign um, and verify the token. So so this literally checks if the token is validated, gets token from the database. When you log in or when a user logs in, the token is stored in the token table which you created. So this checks if the token is validated and also check if it is not expired. And this is what it does, not expired. Gets the expiration time from the token. And this function generates the token, assuming the user wants to log in, right? So this saves the token to the database. So these are literally the functions that are in JWT service. So the next thing we'll do is to um, create our JWT filter config. So to get user detail service, I'm going to import Spring Security Core. JWT filter config would extend one spare request filter, just a basic filter class. In this class, the JWT filter config class extends one per request filter, and JWT service is injected, the one we talked about just now, and also user detail service just loads the user by username from Spring Security. Spring Security would understand who the user is. Now, this the first thing that happens in this do internal filter is that it checks if the endpoint is secured using a bearer token. If the endpoint does not have a bearer token, this will be the end of this function. It just returns and leave this function, and it calls to filter. So let's assume I'm trying to call the login endpoint. Of course, I'll make the login endpoint open and will not require any authorization, right? So when I call this endpoint, and let's assume I've made it open in Spring Security, of course, it won't have a bearer token, and after it leaves this function, um, because I've made the endpoints open, Spring Security allow me access these endpoints. But if I attempt to call this endpoint that requires a bearer token, Spring Security, and it gets here, it checks if it starts with bearer. Of course, a bearer token will start with bearer and the token in the authorization header. So it comes here. This checks the substring of bearer and token, and it extracts the JWT from E. That's why it starts from 7, beginning there 7. So if you count this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so it starts from 7, the seventh index. Sorry, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bearer space token. The seventh index will be E, right? So it extracts the token. And the next thing it does is that it extracts the username from our JWT service, extracts the username, which we talked about earlier. Then if the username is present, it calls load user by username from user detail service. So Spring Security understands how to load the user, get the user password, right? That it registered with. Get it. Then we check if the token provided is a valid token, right? And if it is a valid token, then it gets to filter. So it means that Spring Security validates this token, right? But if there's an exception, let's assume the token is not valid. If there's an exception anywhere from um, unable to extract username, giving, let's assume user provides a fake token, unable to validate the token, then throws an error. So the next thing we do now is to create this exception. Security exception. In case we don't have a permission to access a resource, we just create that. This method that I'm going to create will handle giving permission to users to access routes or endpoints, or denying them, making them unauthorized to access endpoints. And it will also handle uh, um, calls and CSRF. And here we can now use the JWT filter we initially created. We don't want to protect this endpoint such that anybody can register without yet having our JWT token. So for any other requests, so they will need to be authenticated. For any authentication error, that's why this exception handling handles all the exceptions. For any authentication error, we use authentication exception handler to handle it. Why for every authorization error, we use access denied handler to handle it. Could even rename it to access denied exception handler. The username password authentication filter grabs the username and password from the request, passes it to the authentication manager, and attempts to authenticate it. The username and password to see if it is valid. So we're going to disable CSRF for now, but you have to ensure that it is enabled. Let's say, assuming you are building a real application. And we are also going to disable calls. Now that we're done with this, then we are going to implement login, or let's just test this first. All right. Although it is present in the it's present in Spring itself, but let's just manually create it. So because it's not saying it as a bean, right? It's not saying this as a bean. I'll just create and right. So I'll create it as a bean. So you're going to run across other errors and we'll fix it along the way. So we need to create a user details service and also a password encoder. There's an interface that we're just leveraging that has a a load user by username unimplemented method. So this will load user in database by their username. So so when Load user by username is called, it will call the database, our database. So I'm going to inject user repository and get the username. Then we are going to do our password encoder. So this will encode our passwords when the user is created, such that our passwords will not be exposed in the database. So we're going to go to Postman and call the register endpoints to see what's up. Oops, unauthorized. Then we're going to debug it. So we're going to make this a bin. I guess it wasn't triggered. This dot authentication services now. Okay. Cannot invoke registration request detail. Because authentication service is now right. So I believe it's trying to inject this and it's not getting it. Users must manually assign before calling persists. Okay, go to our service. Must be manually assigned. So when you say manually assigned, I'm just going to try this. A generated value. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. Generation type that also is already the defaults. Okay, try again. Right, that's cool. Works now. So we're gonna check our database. And that is us. So I wonder if I had a password. No, I didn't throw in the password. Please beg your pardon. The passwords. Alright. Okay. I'm gonna register another user. And so Yes. Next, we have to ensure that all the checks are being made. So this has a password. Password ought to be hashed. We're going to hash the passwords. Yeah, our password is getting hashed. Sorry. Um, I'm going to rush through creating of the login endpoints. All right, and I'll explain why I did. What I'm doing here is that I'm checking if the user exists in our database. If the user doesn't exist, we throw user not found error. Then we use authentication manager to authenticate. Our authentication manager has got it from Spring Security. So it authenticates the user. So we passed in the user email and password via user and password authentication token. It's also a Spring Security thing. Then we use our JWT service to generate the JWT token and also get the expiry time. So we save the token in our token repository. Let's try it out. Oh, okay. Authentication manager. So we need to create a bin of authentication manager. Okay, we're gonna try to log in with this guy. Oops. So Spring Security is blocking the login endpoints. Remember we said all other requests needs to be authenticated. So here um we would allow our login endpoints to allow it to be called without needing authentication first. All right. Oops. Okay. I believe our key is no long enough. So it needs to have greater or equal to 256 bits. Right. So go to our GWT config, filter, not all filter. Yep. So the secret key needs to be 256 bits. So we're gonna make it longer. All right. Here is our access token and expiry time. The next thing we're going to do is to create a profile controller. So I'll just duplicate this. So the first thing we do is that we'll get the details of the user from Spring Security. It can be of type users because get principal returns or returns an object. It returns actually the user details. Why? It returns the user details. So if users implement user details, it means we can cast it to users. Right. So what we'll do next is that we'll map these users to profile response detail, and I'm going to create a package called mapper. So I have created an endpoint called profile. If I call this endpoint right now, we get full authentication is required to access this resource because I'm not authenticated. So let me try to log in first. I'm just going to save my JWT token. Well, I just save my token here and reference it here just to make it faster. And there we go. So the next thing we're going to do is that we are going to start implementing our Spring Security using Google SignIn. Here is what we're going to do next. We'll add some packages to our pom.xml to facilitate Google signing. The first package would be Google API clients. This will help us access Google APIs. The second would be Google Auth Client Jetty. This would help us verify the tokens that we get from Google, just to check if they are actually assigned from Google, right? So in the backend, we'll be verifying the token we'll be getting from the front end. The front end, like I said, we're going to be building our front end with Flutter. Let's assume user comes into the mobile app and clicks login with Google, and the person chooses his Google profile. A Google ID token will be generated, and we'll be verifying that generated token using our backends. So I'll go to Auth2 Playground. If you do not understand how Auth2 works, you can just quickly read up on it. So these are the scopes that Google has provided. So the scope we'll be choosing for now is to check our profile details. So um, when the user clicks sign in with Google button, this kind of pops up to choose an account, right? And like I said, the scope I chose was to get my profile details. So if I choose my account, it asks me to just to tell me that Google Auth2 Playground will be getting my name, my email address, and profile picture according to that scope I chose, right? So on our app, it will prompt the user that that app will be getting the details of the user. So if I click on continue, then I would get, okay, this part of the OAuth2, how OAuth2 works, right? So I just continue. Okay, so now I have gotten my access token and my ID token, right? So this is my access token and my ID token. So what we'll be doing is I'll be sending this ID token to the backend to verify after we've gotten this from the mobile app. I'm starting with the controller and service, I'll verify the token. And after the token is verified, we're going to issue our own access token. So we're needing our client ID from our console. Um, we impute the client ID here. So in the same vein, we are going to store this and application of the proxy. So we're going to get the um, details of the token. So we're going to get the token will contain an email, to confirm this. You're gonna are just gonna type in, so get a sample payload, verify Google ID token server site. Going to scroll to the bottom and going to open Google ID token. So this is an example of uh, what the token will contain, right? From this, we are going to be getting the email. We are also going to be getting the first and last name. The first name will be the given name, while the last name will be the family name. So we're going to pass this to string. After getting these details, you're going to check if the user exists in our database. So user repository dot find by let's define by email. We're going to check if the user exists. So if the user is not in our database, then we'll create the user, right? So if the user exists, right? So we're just going to return the user, okay? We'll generate a GWT for the user. test this, and the only way to test this is to use our front end to test it, right? The next thing we'll be doing is that we are going to be creating our front end using Flutter. I'm going to bootstrap a project very quickly, and also I'll show you my Google console and how to set it up. So we're going to create a new Flutter project. I'm going to create the files that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be adding my routes. I mean my my screens. For the home screen, I'm going to copy and paste and tell you what I did. I'll create a reusable widgets for my test fields. So all my test fields are going to look similar. I'll call that my text fields. And just to be fast, I'm going to paste it here. So I'll tell you what's happening here. This stateless widgets that will be passing in a controller to the test field, a label test, which is literally a test that is shown if the test field is not yet focused on. A hint test, prefix icon, if test should be obscured or not, the password field will be obscured, the keyboard type, invalidator. So this will be a form field, and we have all of these. This is just a design for it. Okay, so I'll go ahead to add the code for the login screen and the sign up screen. I'll update my popspec.yaml. So on the Flutter dependencies, I'm going to add this. We're going to add Google sign-in, HTTP for network requests, this for localization, um, shared preferences to store some data on a local database on Android or iOS as the case may be. I'm going to run pub get. If the route is sign up, to go to the sign up. If it's login, go to login. If it's home, you go to home. Right. So I would start with the sign up screen to explain what I'm doing here. The sign up screen is a stateful widget. I have my text editing controllers that will control the texts. Um, I'll come back to the Google sign-in implementation. Right. So I have an input field. Now, input text field. This is the reusable widget I created. Right. I call it input text fields, and I passed in my controller and all of that. So I have the field for first name, last name, email, password. I have a button that does the sign up itself. So when I click the sign up button, this function is called, right? So I call the backend, I call register, right? Um, so this is the header. I pass in the details I got from the text fields, right? You can see I pass them to the function. Then the status code is 201, which is created. Then um, I sent the user to the login screen because registration would have been successful. If there's an error, I say sign up failed, right? So that is for the sign up. Okay. So this is just to dispose the controller, which is something that is done in Flutter, just for memory management and cleanup. After the sign up, user is taken to the login screen. Same thing happens. I in the login screen I have my email box text box and the password text box, and I have the login button. If I click on the login button, after the login button at the bottom, I have sign in with Google elevated button. Of course, for sign up at the bottom, I have sign up with Google, which calls this Google sign in function, which we'll come back to. So similar to that, at the bottom we have Google sign in elevated button. So if I click on the normal login button, I'll this is login in, normally calling the login endpoints, passing in my email and passwords to the login endpoint. So this calls this login endpoint there. So authentication slash login, authentication slash login. Yeah, okay. So if login is successful, I store the the JWT token in shared preferences. That's what I'm doing here. So I get the access token from the response and store it in shared preferences. Then I navigate to the home page. There's an error, then I use a snack bar to show the error to the user. So let's go to the home screen. Guess I have to import properly. In the home screen, we're going to import these profiles. Okay. I have my stateless widgets. You are logged in, and I'm displaying the user first name and last name. So in the home screen, I'm calling the view profile endpoints, which is here. Yeah, slash profile. So if I click on this, you see it's calling the profile endpoints, right? Passing in the JWT token, using the JWT token as access token to call that endpoint as authorization and bearer token. All right. So here gets the token from share preferences. Okay. Um, and after getting the token, I'm adding the prefix of bearer because it's a bearer token. So after calling that endpoint, right, I get the details from calling that endpoint. I get the details of the user and I get the first name and last name. So at the bottom, I have a sign out button. If I click it, I'm routed to the login screen. Okay. I hope we're getting it so far. I'll run it just now. We'll see it. So let's go. Let's run it just to see the UI. We are going to run our backends here. There are two ways to go about a base URL. These reports it's running on. You could use 10.0.2.2 if you're running it from an emulator, or you could use your IP address. I mean your IP address of your machine, then your the ports that your backend is running on. I'll just sign in. So you've seen the sign up screen. Okay, let's sign up. Oh, sorry. This will be my email. And this is my passwords. Sign up. And that's successful. And that's successful. Okay, here's my database. Alright. So I'm querying users. This is the last one I added, just 4, right? And my password is being hashed. Okay. For the Google sign-in, I've used this as my base URL. This will allow my emulator to connect to um, localhost 8080, which is that for my backend. So run my backend, right? So here is my client ID. Okay, let me start from here. Um, here's my client ID, and this is where I got it from. The first thing I did was that you come to your Firebase project, you add your app, just click on add app and follow the instruction. Add your SHA-1 certificates, fingerprints here. So you can generate it using this, generate it using this, right? Just add it here. Then download your Google services or JSON and put Google services or JSON file in your app source directory. So, and come to um, come to where you have your package name for your app. Then just scroll down a little bit and look for client type 3. Copy the client ID and use it here as a client's ID here. Okay. So in this function, which is an async function, I'm calling Google signin.signin. I do the response dot authentication, and this one we have access token and an ID token, and here we are looking for the ID token. Not to forget that for our scopes we are using OpenID, right? So this will allow us to get the ID token. All right. And then if the ID token is not null, call my login endpoint, which is where is it? Google login, right? And passing in the ID token, right, which is what was required. Yeah, there's the ID token. On Postman, I can just show you this what is required in the ID token as a request body. All right. Then store the token shared preferences, which will be used for data calls. Okay. So if it is not successful, just use a snack bar to print an error message. So I'm doing the same thing in my sign up screen. Take note that when you are done here, you come to your Google Cloud console, go to console.cloud.google.com, click on clients or API clients, search for API clients, click clients. You see that this will be automatically generated for you, right? An Android client will be automatically generated for you, all right? That is where you had that client ID you use. And you create a web client. Just click create clients, make it a web application, and just put anything here, or you can leave it. But at the end, create a web client, right? After creating a web client, copy the client's ID. So follow the steps, copy the client's ID. I can delete and create a new one, still the same thing. This is one I created in 2022, that was a long time ago. So copy the client ID and come to your backend in your properties, application properties. In your client's ID, you paste it here. Okay. Okay. Paste it here. So this will allow the verification process to happen. I have added logs. I've added logs verifying Google token with this is successful, just to track the movements. Okay. So all right, let's run the app. So if you get the token, you can also copy the token and put it here on Postman and call it directly for verification. Still the same thing, get the same results. Okay, let's go to sign in and sign in with Google. I've successfully signed in. If you are doing it for the first time, of course, the prompt will come up if you should allow this app to access your data. That's what OAuth2 is all about, giving the app access to your Google data, right? You click accept, So you get the ID token. This is the ID token. This is the access token. But you're interested in the ID token. So you're successfully logged in, and of course, I'm passing the data to the next screen, right? Here's where I'm doing it. So in my home screen, yeah. If I click on my view profile, I'm usually passing the data, the first name and last name, to my profile screen. And I'm getting it from calling the view profile endpoints. If I call this profile endpoint, I get the details of the user, and I'm passing the details to the next screen, profile screen. So the profile screen receives the data and displays it. All right. So that is for Google signing. So I'm doing the same thing for sign up. So I can sign out if signing in for the first time, signing up for the first time. I don't have to fill all of these. I want to I want it to be pre-filled or be done using my Google account. I just click sign up with Google. Here that's what I'm talking about, right? So this pops up, and yeah, log in, and that is it. So it takes the data that is in my take the data in my Google accounts. So here's the token. So what I'm going to do is that, just for clarity. So so um, Google has an endpoint for token verification, right? You can copy your ID token you got and paste it here. So and you get the details of the accounts that owns the ID token. So what your backend is doing is that your backend is verifying it, right? So here's verify Google token. Your backend is verifying it using Google Client ID. I copied called verify.verify. If the verification is successful, you will get this Google ID token will have a you have a response, right? And you have you see giving name. I'm getting the giving name. I'm getting the family name, which is my surname. Getting the family name, and I'm checking if that is in the database, right? Of course, I'm getting the email, so which is the email. Yep. So I'm checking if it's in the database. If it is not in the database, then I add it to the database. And if it's in the database, then I just get the user. Then I generate token for the user, save the token, and that will be successful. So that in the next call, if you just fetch it from the database. So with this endpoint or this, you could use it to sign a user up by creating an account for the user and also log the user in and generate a token for the user. Okay. So with this, I hope you have gotten it. So I can decide to log in, sign up with um, my normal credentials, and I can also decide to sign up with Google. Thank you very much. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button and see you in the next one.